Hello, my name is Alper and I am the instructor of this online course. In order to take this course, you don't need to be a developer or expert in IT. As long as you are interested in coding, you have internet access, and you have enough knowledge on using computer, you can subscribe this course. During this course, you will see that Python is easy to learn, easy to use, high-level, strong language, and you can code with Python for many purposes. By the way, Python is also very strong in order to perform computations related to finance, mathematics, physics, accounting, engineering, networking, testing, artificial intelligence, etc. The objective of this course is to help you start learning Python, whatever your profession is. If you need to perform some computation or if you are interested in coding for some applications, this course will provide you a quick introduction and it will help you very much. You are very welcome to my online course. Thanks for watching. Hello. In this lecture, we will start coding with Python. For the first example, we are going to display a message on the screen saying Start coding with Python. First, open a new file, go to File menu, click on New File. In Python, you can simply use print function in order to display the data on the screen. In the first example, we will be using print function. Between the parentheses of print function, you have to enter the data to be displayed on the screen. If you directly enter a text within the parentheses, if you directly enter a string within the parentheses, it has to be framed with quotation marks. Within the quotation marks, I will enter the text. As you can see here, the message is framed with quotation marks and we entered it within the parentheses of the print function. It is that simple. Now, we can save and run this code. In order to save it, go to File menu, click on Save. Now, I need to enter the file name. Let's name it as display message. When you name, you can use underscore. At the end, I'm going to add .py in order to indicate that it's a Python code. Click on Save. Now we can run it. Go to Run menu. Click on Run module. That's it. The message is displayed on the screen. In this lecture, I will show how to enter command in Python. When your code has a few lines, you may not need any explanation. However, when you work for a company or when you implement some complex software or any other reason, you better enter commands in your code, which will simply explain the code. The commented parts will be ignored. In order to enter command, you can simply use #. The part which is entered after # in the line will be command, and that commented part will be ignored. These are the samples to enter command. Let's enter a code using print function. Enter a string value, let's say first. In the following line, enter #. Next, type print. When we run this code, second will not be displayed on the screen. In the following line, let me say print third. And after the print function, let me use # and let me say command. In this line, the code part which is entered after the # will be ignored. This message will be displayed on the screen because this part is not ignored and it is entered before the # in this line. However, this part will be ignored. Let me save and run this code. As you can see from the output, the parts in the lines which are entered after # are ignored. So, first and third are displayed on the screen. In this lecture, we will cover an example using print function. Instead of directly using the values as parameter, we are going to use variables as parameter. The use of variables in Python is easier than the use of variables in some other language. Let's see that in this example. Let's say message1 is equal to a string value hello. Let's enter another variable. Let's name it as number1. I will assign a numeric value, let's say 9. Let me clarify it. We have two variables which are message1 and number1. We did not specify if they will get numeric or string values. For message1, I assigned a string value which is hello. And for number1, I assigned an integer value which is 9. Instead of directly using the values as a parameter for parent function, I will use variables as parameter. Let's see the result. Save, run module. As expected, the values of the variables which are named message1 and number1 are displayed on the screen. We have already started using variables in Python. We already saw that when you assign a value to the variable, the interpreter automatically allocates some space for the variable in the memory. But there are some rules which apply for the variables in Python. In the following tutorial, I provided a reference document on naming rules and naming convention in Python. However, I will also explain some of these rules in this video lecture. First of all, in Python, case matters for identifier names, which means it is case sensitive. Let me show that in this example. Let's say we have a variable which is named number. All the letters are lowercase. I assign a value to this variable. Let's assign 1. If I want to display the value which is assigned to this variable by using print function, I have to enter this variable name exactly the same as a parameter for parent function. If I save and run this code, I will not have any problem and the value which is assigned to number will be displayed on the screen. Let me do that. File, save, run module. As expected, the value which is assigned to number is displayed on the screen. Please note that here all the letters are lowercase letters. What was the first rule? In Python, case matters for identifier names. If I change one of the letters in this variable name, we will have problem when we run this code. Let me change lowercase e to uppercase E. If I run this code, Python will claim that this variable is not defined and we will get name error. File, save as rules2.py, save, run module. As expected, we got name error. Python claims that name, number, which is with uppercase letter E, is not defined. Let's fix this problem. Let me change capital E to small e, save it again. File, save, run module. The value which is assigned to number is displayed on the screen. Please note that for both of them, we used only lowercase letters. Identifier names start with a letter or underscore, and it has to continue with a letter or underscore or digit. Let's start with letter. Let's say number. We started with letter and we continued with letters as well. We can also continue with underscore. We can also continue with digit. Let me assign a value to this variable. This naming is valid. We can also display its value on the screen. That's it. While naming the identifiers, We can also start with underscore. Number 2. We started with underscore. We continued with letters and digit. We can also enter underscore here. It will be fine. Let's assign a value to this variable. Similarly, display its value on the screen by using print function. When we save and run this code, the values which are assigned to these variables will be displayed on the screen. Save and run this code. Rules by run. As expected, the values are displayed on the screen. It worked fine because both of the variables are named correctly based on the rule. Question. Identifier names start with a letter or underscore, and it has to continue with a letter or underscore or digit. What happens if the first is digit? If another variable name includes question mark. So based on the rule, this is invalid. Both of the variables are named incorrectly, we will get error message. As expected, we got error message which says invalid syntax. For this variable name, we have got invalid syntax error. Let's remove this one. Save and run it again. We got another invalid syntax. Okay, let me fix it again. We got another invalid syntax error because of this variable name. What happens if I remove question mark from here and here? Save and run this code. It should work right now because we fixed the errors. Now it works fine. In conclusion for this rule, the identifier name should start with a letter or it can start with underscore. It has to continue with a letter or underscore or digit. If it doesn't match with this rule, the name of the variable will be invalid. When we run the code, we will get error message. The reserved words should not be used to name any variable or any kind of identifier. Reserved words for Python version 2 and Python version 3 are a bit different. In this example, I will make a very simple mistake. I will enter a reserved word as a variable name. Here, choose one reserved word. Let's use finally is equal to 1, and I will try to display its value on the screen. When I run this code, we are going to get error message because we tried to use a reserved word as a variable name. In conclusion, when we use the variables or identifiers, or when we name the identifiers, we have to remember three basic rules. First of all, in Python, case matters for identifier names. So it is case sensitive. Secondly, identifier names should start with a letter or underscore. Letter could be a capital or a small letter. It has to continue with letter, underscore, or digit. Finally, the reserved words should not be used to name any variable or any kind of identifier. I will introduce 5 standard types in Python. The types I will introduce in this section are numeric types, string, tuple, list, and dictionary. For numeric types, I will introduce integers and floating point numbers. When integer is mentioned, you have to remember that integers do not have decimal point. When floating point number is mentioned, you have to remember that it represents real number with decimal point. A string will remind you a sequence of characters. Tuples can also be called as tuple sometimes. However, I call it as tuple. Tuples are immutable and they store multiple members. Lists can remind you arrays in C++, C#, or Java, and lists are mutable. They also store multiple members. A dictionary consists of key-value pairs. So in order to access the data, we are going to use the corresponding key. When we cover tuple, list, and dictionary, you will understand these types better. In this lecture, I will introduce integers and floating point numbers. The first example will be on integers, and the second example will be on floating point numbers. We already used integers in the previous examples. In this example, let me enter two variables which are named number1 and number2. Let's say number1 is equal to 19 and number2 is equal to minus 84. First, learn the type of the variable. So I have to first type, and I have to enter number1 as a parameter for type. In order to display it on the screen, I will enter whole part as a parameter for print function. Let's do the same thing for number2. When we save and run this code, the type for both of number1 and number2 will be displayed as integer. Save, run module. Although we didn't explicitly indicate the type of number1 and number2, but since we assigned integer values to these variables, their types are displayed as integer on the screen. In Python, real numbers with decimal point are represented by floating point numbers. Let's see what happens if we enter real numbers with decimal point for number1 and number2. After we save and run this code, the type of number1 and number2 will be displayed as float. Run. As expected, the type are displayed as float because we entered floating point numbers to both of these variables. In this lecture, I will introduce strings in Python. In Python, in order to store and process textual data, we will use strings. So, we are going to use string type in order to store and process textual data. When you enter string values, they must be framed with single quote, double quote, or triple quote. If you use triple quotes, I would like to tell you two important things. First of all, you have to start and use the same type of quotation mark, which means that if you started with single quotation mark, you have to continue with single quotation mark. If you started with double quotation mark, you have to continue with double quotation mark. Or you can say it like, if you started with single quote, you have to continue with single quote. If you started with double quote, you have to continue with double quote. That's it. Also, with triple quotes, you can enter multi-line strings. When we cover this lecture, you will understand everything better. Let's enter a variable, let's say sample1. And let's assign a string value to this variable. By using single quote, I will enter a string value. So let's say this is an example. Now we assigned a string value to sample1 and we entered string value is framed with single quotes. It is that simple. Let's display this value on the screen by using print function. And let's display its type on the screen as well. So we will use type function and sample1, which is the variable name. It's a parameter for type function. And by using print function, let's display it on the screen. Okay. As expected, the string value which we assigned to sample1 is displayed on the screen. And as expected, the type of sample1 is displayed as string on the screen. In conclusion, for this part, we can enter string values by using single quote. In the first line, I entered a variable and I assigned a string value to this variable. While entering this string value, I framed it with double quotes. The expected result is that the value, which is string value, which we assign to sample2, will be displayed on the screen. And finally, the type of sample2 will be displayed on the screen as string. As expected, the value, which we assign to sample2, is displayed on the screen. Next, the type of sample2 is displayed as string. In conclusion, for this part, we can say that we can enter string values by framing them with double quotes. I will frame this string value with triple single quotes. So I started with single quote and I continue with single quotes. Please don't forget this. This is very important. In the following line, I display the value which we assign to sample3, and finally, I display the type of sample3 on the screen. Let's do that. So, the value which we assign to sample3 is displayed on the screen, and the type of sample3 is displayed as string. Here we are going to use triple double quote. And let's name this variable as sample4 for this example. It doesn't matter what variable name we use in this example. However, I don't want to confuse you with the same variable name in this lecture. So instead of single quotes, here we can enter triple double quotes. If I start with double quote, I have to continue with double quotes. So you see the problem. So now it's okay. I started with double quote and I continue with double quote. That's it. In the following line, we are going to display the value which we assign to sample4. And finally, we are going to display the type of sample4 on the screen. Let's do that. So we display the value which we assign to sample4 on the screen. And finally, the type of sample4 is displayed as string on the screen. When you started with double quote, you have to continue with double quote. If you started with single quote, you have to continue with single quote. Now I am going to change one of these quotes to single quote in order to show you the problem. Even though if you change the symmetric one for the same, you are going to have problem again. Let me show that. Let's try to run it. Run module. So we got error message which says syntax error, invalid syntax. As you can see that if you use triple quote, you have to use the same type of quotation mark. In order to fix this problem, you can make all of them double quotes or single quotes. With triple quotes, you can enter multi-line strings, which means that I can make this string multi-line. And this is, let's say this is another, and let's make it multi-line string as well. Let's make it triple. Why not? That's it. If I run this code, if I save and run this code, we will see the output as we entered. So we entered the value as multi-line string. So the output will be the multi-line as well. Let me show that. As you can see, it is displayed how we entered. So we entered sample 6 in 2 lines. So it is displayed in 2 lines. And we entered sample 7 in 3 lines. It is displayed in 3 lines. That's it. In this lecture, I will introduce lists in Python. By using lists, we can store multiple members. In order to enter the members, we have to enter these members within the brackets. Let me show that in this example. I will first enter a list name, which will be, let's say, sample. And let's enter the members for this list. So I will enter the members within the brackets. The first member will be 1. Let's say the second member to be Python. And third member to be 0. And the last member to be 5. So it is that simple. So we enter the list. And these are the members of the list. All the members are separated by comma. Now, let's display it on the screen first by using print function. So the list name was sample. Let's display its type on the screen as well. So I will use print function again. Next, I will use type. And then I have to type sample. So let's do that. File, save. Let's name it as list1.py. Save, run module. As you can see here, we displayed it and its type on the screen. The type of sample is displayed as list. So these are the expected results. let's continue. Before I start this part, I would like to say that lists are mutable, so we can modify the lists. So it is very important. It can be an interview question. Because of that, please keep this in your mind. I will first access the members of the list by using index numbers. So you already know how to use index numbers. In order to access a member of a list by using index number, you need to first enter list name. Within the brackets, you have to enter the index number. It was a bit different for the strings. However, it is similar. So if you want to access a member of a list by using index number, you have to first enter the list name. Within the brackets, you have to enter the index number. So here, index number 0.1, index number 1 points Python, index number 2 points 0, index number 3 points 5. If you use negative index number -1 points 5, index number -2 points 0, index number -3 points Python, index number -4 points 1. By using print function, I will display some members by accessing them via index numbers. So in order to access a member by using index number, I have to first enter the list name, which is sample. Within the brackets, I have to enter the index number. So let's say 0. Now let's display a member which is pointed by -2. So here we are going to display a member of the list which is pointed by index number 0, and here we are going to display another member which is pointed by index number -2. Let's do that. File, save as. I will name it as list2.py. Save, run module. So index number 0 points 1, and we displayed it on the screen. Index number -2 points 0, which is here, -1 points 5, -2 points 0, and we displayed it on the screen. We can also modify the members of the list. So in order to do that, we can access that member by using index number. So let's modify the member which is pointed by index number 0. So I will enter 0 within the brackets. So I first enter the list name within the brackets. I enter the index number which points the member which I'm gonna modify, so which is 1. Instead of integer value, I will enter, let's enter a list for that. Why not? So within the brackets, I will enter 5. So it will be that simple. And when we display the member which is pointed by index number 0, we are going to display 5 within the brackets. Let's modify another member which is pointed by index number -2. For that, I have to enter the list name first, and within the brackets, I have to enter the index number which is -2, and let's say it is a string value which is Python or learn Python. Let's save it with different names. Save as list3.py. Save and run module. As you can see from the result on the screen, we modified the list. So the new member, which is pointed by index number 0, is 5 within the brackets. And another new member, which is pointed by index number -2, is learn Python. Let me show you one more thing here. I want to show the type of these members as well. Let's say, okay, here I'm going to display the type of sample0 on the screen. Let's do the same thing for another member, which is pointed by index number -2. So parent, next you have to enter the type function, and I enter sample within the brackets -2. So this is kind of parameter for type function, and this is a parameter for print function. Let's save as list4.py, run. After the modification, the type of the member which is pointed by index number 0 is list, and the type of the member which is pointed by index number -2 is string. This is enough for introduction. In the following lectures, we will cover more about lists in Python. This is the end of the lecture. Thanks for watching.
Tuples are similar to the lists, however there are two major differences. First, when we define tuples, we don't use brackets. And second, tuples are immutable, so we cannot modify its members. By using tuples, we can also store multiple members, and we can also access the members of tuple by using the indices. To access the member, the formula is almost the same again. We have to put the tuple name first, and we have to put the index number between the brackets. This line simply displays the first member of the tuple, and this line simply displays the last member of this tuple. We got the expected results. We got error message says tuple object does not support item assignment. Another composite or sequential data type is dictionary. We use dictionaries if we need to access the values by using the specific keys. The main difference of dictionaries from the previous types is that you can use any type of unique key value. To create a dictionary, you have to first enter the dictionary name, and you have to assign the key value pairs which are written between the curly brackets. Here is the example for dictionary. As seen here, value which is related to this key is accessed and displayed on the screen.
In this lecture, I will introduce input function. By using input function, we can get input from the shell. While the program is running, we can get input by using input function. Please note that before I cover this example, the data which we obtain by using input function will be string. In order to use input function, you need to first type input and it is followed by parentheses. If you need to display a message on the screen which explains what kind of data to be entered, you have to enter it within the parentheses. So it will be string again. Let's say, please enter your age. Now we have to assign the input to a variable. Let's say the variable to be sample. The input which is entered by user will be assigned to sample. However, the type of sample will be string. So I will show its type as well. So by using print function, I will display the type of sample on the screen. We can also use this data with print function as well. Your age is. If you need to enter another data within the parentheses of print function, you can separate it with comma. So I can enter another argument for print function by this way. So that argument will be sample. By this way, I can enter two arguments or I can enter two parameters for print function. Let's save and run this code. File, save, run module. This message is displayed on the screen and it's asking us to enter the age. So I will enter, let's say 29. Hit enter. So the type of sample is displayed as string and this part is displayed on the screen. Please note this part. Your age is the value of sample, so it is displayed on the screen.
In the previous example, we saw that input function returns string values. So, when we obtain value by using input function, its type will be string. Let's repeat here. To make it simple, let's enter 12 and 34. Hit enter again. Although we entered integer values, the type of the inputted value is displayed as string. The type of summation is displayed as string, and it is simply the result for joining two character strings end to end. In this example, we are going to cover how to conduct the summation operation for the integer values entered by using input function. In order to do that in Python, we use int function. So this int function simply converts the type of its argument to integer. The argument here is the value which is obtained by using input function from the user. Let's do the same thing for number 2. Now, the type of the value which is assigned to number 1 is integer, and the type of the value which is assigned to number 2 is integer. After that, the type of the summation will be integer, and this operation will be the summation of two integer values. Finally, the type of number 1 is displayed as integer, and the type of summation is displayed as integer here. Let's see what happens if we try to enter float numbers using this code. As seen here, we got error message. To fix this issue, we can simply convert input to float type. In order to do that, instead of int function, we need to use float function. Now, the type of the value which is assigned to number 1 and the type of the value which is assigned to number 2 will be float. The problem is solved. The result is the summation of two float numbers, and the type for number 1 and for summation are displayed as float. In this tutorial, I will quickly introduce the major arithmetic operators in Python. These operators are listed here for addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, modulus, exponent, and floor division. Here, I have provided some example code. Let me quickly run this code. The results are displayed on the screen. Please see the difference between division and floor division in terms of results. For floor division, we don't have decimal part, but for division, we have decimal part when we divide 27 by 4. When you conduct arithmetic operation, you have to consider the order of arithmetic operators in Python. You have to keep it in mind. Anything within the parentheses is completed first. After parentheses, you have to consider exponent. After that, multiplication, division, modulus, and floor division operators will be considered. After these operators, you have to consider addition and subtraction operators. After all these arithmetic operators, you have to consider assignment operator. Here, I have provided some sample operations. In the first arithmetic operation, you have to consider the operation within the parentheses. After that, you have to consider multiplication operator. So the result for here is 7. 2 by 7, 14. And finally, the result for this arithmetic operation is assigned to this variable named result1. In the second arithmetic operation, you have to first consider this multiplication operation, and then you have to consider addition. For the third arithmetic operation, you have to first consider the arithmetic operation between the parentheses. The result is 7. After that, you have to consider this arithmetic operation, which is 2 to the power 2. Then it becomes 4 by 7. Finally, the result becomes 28. Let's verify these results here. We got the expected results according to how we explained these operations here. In Python, there is also Boolean data type. It has two states. They are true and false. Python's logical operators are logical not, logical and logical or. Let's start with logical not operator. The result of logical not operation is reverse state of its operands. In this example, initial state of x is given as true. First, logical not operation is conducted on x. Since the initial state of x is given as true, the result of this logical not operation will be false. Then, the result will be assigned to x. Finally, the final state of x will be displayed as false on the screen. The initial state of x is displayed as true, as we assigned in the beginning. The type of x is displayed as Boolean, and finally, the final state of x is displayed as false. for this logical operation, if the state of all the operands are true, the result will be true. Otherwise, the result will be false. In this example, the state of x is true and the state of y is true. So the result for this logical AND operation will be true. For logical OR operation in Python, we use logical OR operator, which is written with small characters. To get the state as false for the result of logical OR operation, the states of all the operands should be false. In this example, the initial states of x and y are entered as false, so the result of this logical OR operation will be false. To conduct comparison operations in Python, the following comparison operators are used. The results for comparison operations are in Boolean type. Here, I will quickly run this code to show the results. The results are displayed on the screen when the value of x is 3 and the value of y is 4. If we ask if x is equal to y, the result will be false because 3 is not equal to y. If we ask if x is not equal to y, the result will be true because 3 is not equal to 4. If we ask if x is greater than y, the result will be false. If we ask x is less than y, the result will be true because 3 is less than 4. If we ask if x is greater than or equal to y, the result will be false. And if we ask if x is less than or equal to y, the result will be true. Conditional statements are very important in order to manage the program. In Python, conditional statements are entered using if, elif, and else. Let's start with if. Let's assume that we have some specific task, and this task should be conducted only for some specific condition. Let's think very simple for the example. For example, if the value of number is equal to 1, we would like to display this message on the screen. We can implement it in Python using if statement. We first type if, next we enter the condition. After the condition, we put colon operator. After the colon operator, we enter the task which is going to be conducted when the condition is true. You can also enter the condition within the parentheses in order to make your code more readable. However, it is not mandatory. So we can remove the parentheses. Here, we first entered if and then we entered the condition. This condition is a simple comparison operation. Its result will be true or false. If the value of number is 1, we will display this message on the screen. Since number is equal to 2, so it is not equal to 1, this message is not displayed on the screen. Let's try it again for number is equal to 1. The message is displayed on the screen since the value for number is equal to 1. Let's think that we need to conduct some task when other related conditions are false. At that time, we need to use else statement. To enter else statement, we don't need to enter any condition. We simply write else. After else, we put colon operator. After the colon operator, we enter the task which is going to be conducted when other related conditions are false. For this example, let's say if the value of number is not equal to 1, the condition for if statement will be false. In that case, we would like to display another message on the screen. To do that, we need to use else statement. Here, we simply entered else. After else, we put colon operator. After the colon operator, we entered code part, which will display another message on the screen. As displayed on the screen, the condition for if statement is false. So the task entered for else statement is executed and this message is displayed on the screen. We use if statement to say do that if this condition is true. We use else statement to say do that if all related conditions are false. What happens when we need to do something if other conditions are false but some other condition is true? At that time, we can use elif statement. Let's think it very simple. We would like to display a message on the screen if the value for number is 10. So to do that, we need to enter another condition. In order to enter another condition, we can use elif statement. Elif statement is similar to if statement. First, we write elif. After elif, we enter the condition. After the condition, we put colon operator. After the colon operator, we enter the task which is going to be conducted when condition is true. For this example, number is equal to 10. At that time, this condition will be false. This condition will be true. Therefore, it will display this message on the screen. Since one of the conditions is true, this part will not be conducted. In addition, we can have multiple elif statements for different conditions as seen in this example. Since number is equal to 10, this condition is true. This part is executed. This part displayed this message on the screen.
The identity operators in Python are is and is not. If the variables on both sides of is operator are pointing to the same object, the result for the operation will be true. Otherwise, it will be false. If the variables on both sides of is not operator are pointing to the same object, the result for that operation will be false. Otherwise, it will be true. I will make it much easier to understand with this example. So let me repeat it again. Is operator checks the identity, and it is different from equality operator because this one checks the equality. However, is operator checks the identity. In this example, in the first line, I assigned a list to C. The members of this list are 1, 2, and 3. Similarly, I assigned a list to A. Also, the members of this list are 1, 2, and 3. You can say A is equal to C. However, A and C are not pointing to the same object. When you check if A is C, the result for this operation will be false because A and C are not pointing to the same object. However, A and C are equal, so result for this operation will be true. Since A is not C, the result for this operation will be true. Here, we display the result for this operation. It will display true on the screen, and this will display the result for this operation, and the output on the screen with this line will be false. And here, with this line, we display the result for this operation on the screen, true. In the third line, I entered this code part, which is B is equal to A. With this line, we also say that B is assigned with this list. At the same time, A and B are pointing to the same object. Since A and B are pointing to the same object, the result for this operation will be true. Since A and B are pointing to the same object, A is B. Since A is B, the result for this operation will be false. The result for this operation is displayed with this line, true. The result for this operation is displayed with this line, and it will be false. Let me save and run this code. Run module. As I mentioned, A is equal to C is true. However, A is C will be false. So A is not C will be true. Since A is B will be true, and because of that, this operation will be false. In Python, membership operators are in and not in. The result for the operations which are conducted by using in or not in operator can be true or false. In the beginning, I created two variables. A is equal to a string value, which is Python. B is equal to another string value. It is learn Python. It is very simple. Let's start with in operator. If operand on the left side of in operator is member of the operand on the right side, the result for that operation will be true. A, as you see here, is member of B. The result for this operation will be true. Otherwise, the result will be false. Let's see here. It is asking if B is member of A. Since B is not member of A, the result for this operation will be false. In case of not in operator, the result will be opposite of in operator. At the end of this sample code, I displayed these operations and their results on the screen. Let me save and run this code. Run module. So we got the expected results.
In order to execute a set of code for several times, loops will be very useful. It will make many things easier for you if you use the loops correctly and efficiently. You will need to use the loops for many tasks in different fields, from scientific problems to automation tests. We will start with while loop. While loop is used to execute some code part while the condition is true. In order to use the while loop, you have to first write while. After that, you have to enter the condition. After the condition, you have to put the colon operator. After the colon operator, you have to enter the code which will be executed while the condition is true. Please note this indented space here. Let's say you need to display the integer numbers from 0 to 100. You can have many solutions for this problem. One of the solutions for this problem is using while loop to display the integer numbers from 0 to 100. Let's say this example. Here we have a variable named number and its initial value is 0, and here we have a while loop. In each step of this while loop, we display the value of number on the screen. At the end of each step, we increase the value of number by 1. While value of number is less than or equal to 100, this process will continue. We used while loop to repeat a set of code while the condition is true. We can also use for loop for the similar tasks. However, it is better to consider a sequence when we use for loop. In this code, we are generating a sequence here, and the members of this sequence are the integer numbers from 0 to 100. In each step of this for loop, we are displaying the members of this sequence on the screen. How we used for loop in this code? We first wrote for here. After that, we entered the variable which is going to be used within the loop, and this will be referring to each member of this sequence. And then we entered in, and here we used range function in order to generate a sequence whose members will be the integer numbers from 0 to 100. After the range function, we put colon operator. In the following line, we entered code which is going to be executed within the loop. Please note this indented part here. Let's explain how we used range function in this code. Within the parentheses of range function, we first entered the initial value of the sequence, which is going to be 0. After that, we entered final value plus 1 in order to make sure that this final value will be the last element of this sequence. And finally, we entered the step value as 1, which is the difference between the members of this sequence. Please note that this value is positive, so which is the increasing value between the integer members of this sequence from 0 to 100. Let's run it to see it better. We displayed the integer numbers from 0 to 100 by using for loop here. In Python, in order to manage the loops, continue, break, and pass statements are used. Continue statement is used to skip the remaining part of the current step of the loop if some specific condition is true. Break statement is used to terminate the loop if some specific condition is true. Pass statement means don't do anything if some condition is true. In this lecture, I will not spend time on pass statement. I will explain continue and break statements in more details. Let's see this code. In this code, while loop is used in order to display the integer numbers from 10 to 0. Let's run this code to see the result on the screen. As seen on the screen, the integer numbers from 10 to 0 are displayed here. Let's say we should display the integer numbers from 10 to 0 except of 5, which means we need to skip to display 5 on the screen. We can do that by using continue statement. Here, we simply say that if number is equal to 5, skip displaying the value and continue to the next step. Let's run this code to see the result. As seen here, except of 5, all the integer numbers from 10 to 0 are displayed on the screen. Let's assume we need to terminate the loop if the number is equal to 5. At that time, we can use break statement to do that. So if we modify this code here by saying if number is equal to 5, terminate the loop. To do that, we use break statement here. Let's run this code to see the result. Since the loop is terminated if number is equal to 5, only the integer numbers from 10 to 6 are displayed on the screen. Let's just use pass statement here to show that pass means don't do anything if number is equal to 5. Save and run this code to see the result. Nothing is done when this condition was true here. The integer numbers from 10 to 0 are displayed on the screen. In the previous lecture, we used while loop to display the integer numbers from 10 to 0. We also covered how to use continue, break, and pass statements in the while loop. Let's review again how we implement while loop. In order to implement while loop, we have to first write while, next we enter condition, and then we put colon operator. After the colon operator, we write the task or tasks which is going to be executed while the condition is true. Please note this indentation here. When we enter the task or tasks in different line or lines for the while loop. So, we used this code in the previous lecture in order to display the integer numbers from 10 to 0 by using while loop. Let's review also how we implement for loop. Here, we first write for. Next, we enter the iterating variable. After that, we write in. And then, we enter the sequence. After the sequence, we put colon operator. After the colon operator, we enter the task or tasks which are going to be executed in each step of for loop. Please note this indented part here. When we enter the task or tasks in different line or lines, when we implement for loop. If we implement for loop in order to display the numbers from 10 to 0, we can use this code. Here, by using range function, we generate a sequence. Its members are the integer numbers from 10 to 0. And each step of this loop, we display the members of this sequence on the screen. Here, range function is used to generate a sequence whose members are the integer numbers from 10 to 0. And this for loop is entered to display each member of this sequence on the screen in each step of this loop. So it is for number, which is the iterating variable in the sequence, in, and then here is the code which generates the sequence, and then we put colon operator, and in this line we display the members of the sequence which is generated by using range function in each step of the for loop. Let's run this code to see the result. As seen here, the integer numbers from 10 to 0 are displayed on the screen. Similar to the example in the previous lecture, let's say we should display the integer numbers from 10 to 0 on the screen, except of 5, which means we need to skip to display 5 on the screen. So, similar to the example in the previous lecture, we can do that by using continue statement. If number is equal to 5, skip displaying the value of number in this step. Let's save and run this code to see the result. As you can see from the numbers on the screen, 5 is not displayed on the screen after we entered continue statement in order to skip this step when the number is equal to 5. We can also use break statement in for loop. Let's say we need to terminate the loop if number is equal to 5. So we have to enter this line here. If number is equal to 5, break the loop. We can also enter it like that in different lines, but it will be indented according to if here. Let's save and run this code to see the result. Since the loop is terminated when the number is equal to 5, only the integer numbers from 10 to 6 are displayed on the screen. We can also use pass statement in for loop, and we are going to get the same result as we did in the example in the previous lecture. Let's run and see that. So all the members of the sequence generated by range function are displayed on the screen, which are the integer numbers from 10 to 0. This is the end of the lecture. In the following sections, we are going to use the loops in some examples. So we will have opportunity to practice and see how to use the loops in action. When we need to keep running some code part continuously until some condition gets true, we can use infinite loop. Let's think we ask the user to enter the password. Until the user enters the correct password, we will keep asking the user to enter the password. Unless the user enters the correct password, this code part will be executed. We can use while loop in order to implement infinite loop, as seen in this example. In order to implement infinite loop, we have to enter a condition which is always true. To terminate the loop, we can use break statement as seen here. Until the user enters this correct password, this code will keep asking the user to enter the password. When the user enters the correct password, this while loop will be terminated and this message access is granted will be displayed on the screen. Let's see that in this example. Let's enter the correct password in this step. As you have seen in this example, until the user entered the correct password, it was continuously asked to enter the password. When the user entered the correct password, this loop is terminated and this message which says access is granted is displayed on the screen. already used Python functions. Also, we already know how to call or use function and how to enter arguments into the function. In the previous examples, we used print function very often, and we entered argument between the parentheses of print function to be displayed on the screen. We also covered how to enter a variable as argument to a function in Python. We also covered how to use or assign the returning value of function to a variable. In Python, we can also define new functions. Let's quickly cover it in the following lectures. Here, it is shown how to define function in Python. We will not implement everything in one example as shown in this definition. We will cover step by step in order to make it easier to understand. Since this definition could be a bit complicated for you in the beginning, let me introduce this simplified definition instead of this one. In Python, function block starts with this keyword. After def, we have to enter the function name. After the function name, we have to put opening and closing parentheses. If it is needed to use arguments within the function, then we have to enter arguments. But if not, it is not mandatory to use arguments in the definition of the function. After the closing parenthesis, we have to put colon operator. After the colon operator, enter the statement or statements which are going to be executed when this function is called. Let's start with a very simple example. Assume that you need to implement a function which displays a message on the screen when it is called. Let's say this message is hello, so this function doesn't need any argument to be entered. When we define this function, we don't need to put any referential name for any argument at all. Let's start implementing this function here. First, we have to write def. Next, we have to enter the function name. Let's say hello is the function name. Next, put parentheses. After the parentheses, put colon operator here. Let's continue with the next line, and please note this indentation here. Here, we can use print function, which will display the message on the screen. Finally, the definition of the function is done. Now we need to call that function similar to how we called print function without argument. Enter the name of the function which we just defined here and put opening and closing parentheses. With this code part, we are calling this function. Since we are working in the same file, we don't need to use any reference, so we can directly use the name of the function here. Let's save and run this code in order to see the result. When we call the function, this message is displayed on the screen. In this lecture, we will see how to use argument in the function. Let's modify this code to say hello by using your name. For example, here I entered my name and I want this function to be modified in order to display hello Alper on the screen. To do that, I have to use some argument for this function as seen in this definition. And please note, if you need to enter more than one argument, you have to separate the arguments with comma operator. I put the argument here. After that, I need to modify this part in order to add this argument into the message. Let's leave a space here to make the message look better and use addition operator. So, this part is modified. If we try to call this function without using any argument as seen in this line, we will get error message because we are not using any argument to call this function. Let's see this error message on the screen. Let's see what happens if we enter this variable as argument in this function call. Finally, the message, which is hello Alper, is displayed on the screen. Please repeat this example by entering your name also in order to see the result. This is the end of the lecture. In the next lecture, we will cover the functions with default arguments. In this lecture, we will cover how to define a function with default argument value. In the example from the previous lecture, we got error message when we call the function without entering any argument in the function call. If we define the function with default argument value, we wouldn't get any error message. As you can see from this sample function definition, we need to assign initial value to the argument. So let's do that here. Let's say dear customer. Here, dear customer is the initial value of this argument in this function definition. Let's call this function again without using any argument in the function call. Since we didn't enter any argument in the function call, the output displayed on the screen is hello dear customer. Let's call this function by using this variable as argument in this function call. Since we use this variable as argument in the function call, the message displayed on the screen is hello Alper instead of hello dear customer. In the function definition, we can enter function docstring and we can access that docstring by function name dot double underscore doc double underscore. Let's quickly cover that in this example. So we are going to modify one of the previous examples. The docstring will be string. Let's say this is an example. But in real-life applications, you will need to enter something more related to the function. In order to call that, you have to enter the function name dot double underscore doc double underscore. And let's display it on the screen using print function and call that language-defined identifier in the print function. It is displayed on the screen. In this lecture, we will cover how to implement a function which returns a value. In order to do that, we will use return keyword. Assume that we need to implement a function which returns the summation of two arguments. Here is the sample for that task. By using def keyword, we started implementing this function and we named this function as some parameters. There are two arguments which will be used within the function. these parameters are arg1 and arg2. You can use different names. And here we put colon operator. In the following line, we assign the summation of these two arguments to the variable named result. At the end of this function definition, we return the result by using return keyword. The definition of this function is done. Before we call this function here, we created two variables, number1 and number2. Number1 is equal to 3 and number2 is equal to 5. And here we called this function, we call some parameters using number1 and number2 as arguments. Here, by using assignment operator, the summation of number1 and number2 is assigned to the variable named summation, because when we call this function by using number1 and number2 as arguments, the result for the summation of these two arguments will be returned by this function. At the end, we will display the result of this summation. The summation of these two variables is returned by the function successfully, and we assigned this returning value to the variable named summation. The value for summation is successfully displayed on the screen. In Python, we can also return value with anonymous functions implemented by using lambda operator. Similar to the previous example, let's implement a function which returns the summation of two arguments. Let's refer to this anonymous function as summation using lambda keyword. Next, we need to enter the arguments. We can enter as many arguments as needed for this anonymous function. Since we implement a function which returns the summation of two arguments, we just need to enter two arguments. After the arguments, put colon operator, and finally, we can enter the expression. With this function, we are going to return the summation of two arguments, so the expression will be the summation of these two arguments. Let's display the summation of 3 and 5 using this anonymous function. The summation of 3 and 5 is displayed on the screen, which was returned by this anonymous function. Python is object-oriented programming language. In this section, I will introduce object-oriented programming with Python. But before we start, I need to introduce some related terms. Let's start with simple example. For example, a specific car can represent an object. Let's say this specific car is your car. So this specific car has specific attributes and behaviors, such as specific make, model, gear, transmission type, etc. Your car is unique with its registration number and other attributes and behaviors. So we called your car as object. Car, in general term, is a class. Your car is object of the class named car. So there are other objects of this class as well, and these objects are also unique according to each other. For example, your car, your friend's car, your manager's car, your neighbor's car, another person's car, all are the objects of this class named car. Let's review some introductory definitions. Class is defined as a prototype of object. For example, car in general term. And all unique cars, your car, your friend's car, your manager's car, your neighbor's car, another person's cars, etc. are objects of this class. Method is a function which is defined within the class, and this method can be called using that specific class or the object of that specific class. You will understand this term with examples in the following lectures. But as a quick example, assume that you define a function, let's call it fuel consumption, which computes the fuel consumption based on some parameters, and you define this function within the class. Member of a class can be a method or data member which is defined and used within the class. For example, make, model, year, transmission type, fuel consumption, etc. Instance is a specific realization of an object of a certain class. And another term is object. Object is defined as a unique instance of a specific class and which has behaviors, data, and state. For example, your car is an object of the class named car. In object-oriented programming, instantiation means creation of instance of a specific class. In this lecture, we will cover how to create a class. In order to create a class keyword is used. After that, class name is entered. Let's say class name is car. Next, we have to put colon operator. And we can go to the next line. And please note the indentation. And please remember that indentation and colon operator are very important in Python. As we did while covering the functions, we can optionally enter documentation string. Next, the constructor can be entered. Constructor is also called as initialization method. When we create an instance object of the class, initialization method will be called. In order to enter initialization method, we need to use def keyword. Next, we should enter double underscore, init, double underscore. Next, we put opening and closing parentheses. And we put colon operator. Now, between the parentheses of initialization method, the required parameters will be entered. We first enter self parameter. Please note that self will be reference to the instance of this class. Whenever you enter the initialization method of the class, your first parameter will be self. All the parameters will be comma separated. Next, we enter the parameters which are needed for this class. Let's say make, model, and year are needed in this class. Within the initialization method, we have to enter self dot parameter is equal to parameter. It will be like that. Self dot make is equal to make. Self dot model is equal to model. Self dot year is equal to year. By these assignments, the new object will be instantiated with these parameters. And in the next lecture, we will see that when we create an object from this class, these parameters will be entered between the parentheses. And let me enter print function here. It will be displaying a message on the screen when an instance of the class is created. So the message is that instance object of the class is created. Let's define another method within this class here. And let's say this method will display the make, model, and year of the object. To define this method, we will be using def keyword again. Let's name this method as display parameters. Again, opening and closing parentheses and colon operator. Between the parentheses, we have to enter self. In the following indented line, we enter the code set which will be executed when this method is called. Using print function, first display the make. Please note that when we display it, we are calling the member by self.make. Next, let's display the model. In the next line, let's display the year. I made a mistake here. Let's display this string part, model and year. Please note how we access the members within the class. We said self.make, self.model, self.year. And also, in order to leave one empty line, let's enter empty print function. Yes, that's it. Actually, this is enough to create a class. We have to first enter class keyword, and then we have to enter the name of the class. Next, we put the colon operator. After that, optionally, we enter the documentation for the class. If you don't need any explanation, you can remove this part. Next, we defined initialization method for this class. In order to do that, we first entered def keyword. Next, we entered double underscore init, double underscore, and it is followed by opening and closing parentheses and colon operator. Between the parentheses, we entered the parameters, and the first parameter should be self. In the next line, we made these assignments. Please note self.parameter is equal to parameter, self.another parameter is equal to that parameter, self.year is equal to year. I entered this line optionally in order to show something in the next lecture, so you can enter this part as well. After the initialization method, I defined another method in order to give some example. And please note, how we access the members here. By self dot. So the creation of the class is done. This is the end of the lecture. In the next lecture, we will create an instance object for this class. I will explain how to create an instance of the class. Or you can call it how to create an object of the class as well. In order to do that, we have to enter the object name or instance object name. And then we have to enter assignment operator. And it is followed by class name, opening and closing parentheses, and within the parentheses, we enter the parameters. When we create an instance object of the class, initialization method will be called. So this method will be called. And here, self parameter represents the instance of the object itself. So let's create an object of this class is equal to class name, opening and closing parentheses. Within the parentheses, we have to enter the parameters except of self. Let's say make is A, model is B, and year is 2014. We didn't save the code in order to continue with this example. So let's save and run this code to see the result. As displayed on the screen, an instance of the class named car is created. We entered this code part in order to display this message when an instance of this class is created. So this message is displayed on the screen. We will cover how to access the members. Let's continue with the same example. Let's create another object here as well, and let's call that new object as car2. For car2, let's say make is C, model is D, and year is 2000. In order to access the members by using object name, we have to first enter the object name, and it is followed by dot and member name. Let's call the method named display parameters for these two objects. Object name dot member name. If the member is a method, we have to put opening and closing parentheses. Let's do the same thing for car2. Let's save and run this code to see the result. Let's cover what happened step by step. First, an instance object of the class is created, which is for car1, and this message is displayed on the screen. Related to what we are covering, this method is called by saying car1.displayParameters. So the parameters for car1 are displayed on the screen. And here, an instance object of the class is created for car2. Next, this method is called for car2. So the parameters for car2 are displayed on the screen. Let's access another member which is not method. Let's say we would like to display this member on the screen. Let's use print function. So we have to first enter the object name dot member name. Let's do the same thing for another object. As displayed on the screen, we could access this member for both objects by using this formula. We have to first enter object name dot member name. We will cover class variables in Python. Class variable is shared by all the instances of the class, and class variable is defined outside of the methods of the class. For this example, let's say we need to count the number of cars. Let's name this variable as total number. We first entered it within the class and outside of the methods of this class, and let's say its initial value is 0. I need to increase this number within the initialization method, because whenever an instance of this class is created, it will be increased by 1. Let's modify this part. Whenever an instance of this class is created, this number will be increased by 1, and total number of car will be displayed on the screen. When the first instance of the class is created, this number is increased by 1. When the second instance of this class is created, this number is increased by 1, and this message is displayed on the screen. Let's do one more thing here. Instead of displaying the total number of cars for each creation of instance, let's display it at the end. Let's save and run this code to see the result. We are displaying the total number of cars by accessing this class variable. Let's create 4 instances for this example. When we created 4 instances of this class, the total number of the car is displayed as 4 on the screen. We will quickly cover garbage collection in Python. For garbage collection, we need this structure. We will continue with the same code from the previous example. Similar to constructor, the structure is also defined with the function in special form. To implement this structure, def keyword is used, and it is followed by double underscore, del double underscore, opening and closing parentheses, and colon operator. And here, self is used as parameter. In the constructor, we increased this number by 1 whenever an instance object of this class is created. Let's reduce this number within the structure. Whenever an object of this class is removed. So whenever an object of this class is removed, this number will be reduced by 1. In order to remove object, del is used. Let's remove car4, and let's display the number of the objects of this class before and after we remove this object. So let's modify this part here. Let's save and run this code to see the result. As expected, we had 4 objects of this class before we removed car4, and after we removed car4, the number has become 3. Let me show you one more thing here. Let's try to access a member for car4 after car4 is removed. As expected, we got error message because this object is already removed and this code will not be working properly, as seen from this result. As seen from the result, this is accessed because we didn't remove this object in this code. In conclusion, we can use the structures in Python as defined here, and we can remove the objects by using that. I will introduce inheritance in Python. Inheritance is very important concept in object-oriented programming. Instead of creating a class from the scratch, we can derive a child class from a parent class. However, please keep that in mind. Child class and parent class should be related. Parent class is also called as superclass, and child class can also be called as subclass. And in this lecture, we will be using these terms. The syntax for inheritance in Python is very simple and it is provided here. In order to create a child class or subclass, we have to use class keyword. And it is followed by subclass name, opening and closing parentheses, and colon operator. Between the parentheses, we have to enter the superclass name. In addition, in Python, a subclass can have more than one superclass. At that time, we have to enter the superclasses one by one. For the example in this lecture, we will have a subclass with one superclass, so let's remove this part for now. In the next line, we need to enter the related codes as we did in the previous lectures to create class. So let's continue with the example. In this example, we are creating two classes. The first class is named car, and let's start explaining this class first. Since this class is not subclass of any class, we will be using the syntax for standard class creation. So we have to first enter class keyword, and it is followed by the class name, which is car, and then it is followed by colon operator. Next, we have to enter the related code for this class. I try to keep this code very simple in order to explain this topic very clearly. So first I entered a class variable, or you can call it as attribute as well. So I assigned a string value to this variable. At the end, I will try to access this from the object of subclass, but let's stop here and let's cover the first class first. And next, I defined an initialization method for this class, as we did in the previous examples, but there is some small differences here. As we did before, in order to create an initialization method, we have to use def keyword, and it is followed by double underscore, init, double underscore, and opening and closing parentheses, and colon operator. Here, the only parameter is self. So when we create an instance of this class, we will not be entering any parameter at all. So it is enough for now. You will see later on. And there is no assignment within this initialization method. But I display a message on the screen, which is that initialization method of superclass is called. This message will be displayed whenever an instance of this class is created. Next, I defined another method which is called super method, and its only parameter is self. Whenever this method is called, this message will be displayed on the screen. Method of superclass is called. And finally, this class is created. Let's cover the second class in this example. We came to the most important part of this lecture. We are going to create a subclass in Python, and this subclass inherits attributes and methods of its superclass. In this example, subclass is luxurious car. Its superclass is car, which means that luxurious car will inherit methods and attributes of car. In order to create a subclass, we use class keyword, and it is followed by subclass name. Subclass name in this example is luxurious car, and it is followed by opening and closing parenthesis and colon operator. Between the parentheses, we enter the superclass name for this subclass, and superclass is car. Here, we will enter the code, whatever we need for this class. In the first line, I created another class variable, and I named it as substring, and I assigned some string value to the variable. Next, I defined an initialization method for this subclass by using def keyword, and it is followed by double underscore init, double underscore, opening and closing parenthesis, and colon operator. When I create an instance of this class, I don't need to enter any argument. So the only parameter for this initialization method is self. And here, within this method, I put this code line, which will display a message on the screen whenever an instance of this class is created. After that, I defined another method, which will display a message on the screen whenever it is called. So we are done for this class creation as well. Let's continue with the code parts at the bottom in order to see the results. In this part of the lecture, we will be working with the object of this subclass. We first create an instance object of the subclass here. So instance name, assignment operator, and class name. And we put opening and closing parentheses. Between the opening and closing parentheses, we have to enter the required parameters. However, when we defined the initialization method of this subclass, the only parameter we entered was self, so we don't enter any parameter when we create an instance object here. Since we created an instance object of this subclass, this message will be displayed on the screen. Next, by using the object of subclass, we are calling the method which is defined within the superclass. because of inheritance it is possible. So this message will be also displayed on the screen. Method of superclass is called. In the next line, we are accessing the variable which is entered within the superclass by using the object of subclass here. So this string value will be displayed on the screen as well. With these two lines of codes, I am trying to show that we can access a method or a variable of superclass by using the object of subclass. And in the following line, by using the object of subclass, we access the variable which is defined within the subclass, and then we display the value of this variable on the screen. And finally, we call the method which is defined within the subclass by using the object of subclass. So after this value, this message will be displayed on the screen. Since we created an instance object of this subclass, this message is displayed on the screen. Initialization method of subclass is called. By using the object of subclass, we called super method which is defined within superclass, and because of that, this message is displayed on the screen. Method of superclass is called. Next, here we accessed the variable which is entered within the superclass, and its value is displayed on the screen. But note that here we used object of subclass. As we can see from these two lines, we can access a method or a variable of superclass by using the object of subclass. And in this example, car is superclass, luxurious car is subclass. And next, we displayed the variable which is defined within the subclass, and it is class variable of subclass. Finally, we called the method which is defined within the subclass, and when we call that method, this message is displayed on the screen. In the previous example, luxurious car class was subclass of car. I will introduce how to use a subclass as a superclass of another class. In order to do that, we need to derive a new class from luxurious car. So by using class keyword, we are creating a new class. It is sub-luxurious car, and we are using luxurious car as superclass for this new class. And then we define an initialization method for this new subclass. So the creation of the new subclass is done. Class name, opening and closing parentheses, superclass name, and colon operator, and it is followed by initialization method. After we created this new subclass, we create its instance object here. Because of the definition of its initialization method, we don't have to enter any parameter here. Since we created an instance of this new subclass, this message will be displayed on the screen. Next, by using the object of this new subclass, we are calling the methods of car and luxurious car. So this message and this message will be displayed also. As displayed on the screen, we got successful results. In conclusion, we can use a subclass as a superclass of another class.